I always thought heartbreak would arrive like thunder, loud, messy, cinematic. Instead, mine came on a sunny Thursday afternoon, between two sips of lukewarm coffee, when Ethan cleared his throat and said, "You're amazing, but, yes." The world's most recognizable opening line, the breakup blueprint. I'd been expecting a ring. I'd even gotten my nails done, a pale pink shade called Hopeful Whisper. The irony wasn't lost on me when, hours later, that same polish shimmered under the fluorescent lights of a cafe as he told me he'd met someone unexpected. Someone who coincidentally had a yacht, a following, and a jawline sharp enough to slice through my self-esteem. He said it wasn't about money. Of course not. It was about shared ambitions. I guess sailing around the Amalfi Coast counted as an ambition now. When he left, he patted my shoulder, patted like I was a rescue dog he'd grown fond of. My throat tightened, but I refused to cry. Not yet. Not while he was still within emotional Wi-Fi range. The moment the door closed, I did what any modern woman does in crisis, opened my group chat. "Girl, he left me for a yacht," I typed. Within seconds, the sympathy emojis flooded in. One friend offered to come over with wine. Another sent a link to a breakup playlist. My mom called twice, then texted, "Call me if you're alive." I laughed. It was a wet, broken kind of laugh, the kind you choke on halfway through. That night, I stared at my ceiling, counting invisible stars through the cracks in my plaster. My apartment smelled faintly of vanilla candles and existential dread. I told myself I was fine, a bold-faced lie that even my cat, Luna, didn't buy. She stared at me with those judgmental green eyes, tail twitching, as if to say, "You really thought he was the one?" I did. I really did. We'd met in the least romantic way possible at a co-working space, fighting over the last outlet. He'd joked that I sparked something in him. Cute then, tragic now. He used to say he loved my art, so raw, so real. But when the influencer came along, with her designer brush sets and curated minimalism, suddenly my sketches were too emotional. I remember laughing through tears that night, muttering, "Yeah, emotions, what a flaw." By day 3, I'd stopped pretending. I let the dishes pile up, the curtains stay closed. I even unfollowed him on social media, which, in modern terms, is practically a restraining order. Still, his posts kept sneaking into my feed, him smiling, her laughing, both glowing like they'd swallowed the sun. I zoomed in on one photo, spotting my old denim jacket draped over his shoulders. My jacket, the one I'd hand-painted for his birthday. A small, stupid detail, but it hit harder than it should have. I told myself it didn't matter. That art was meant to travel, that he was just another brushstroke in my story. But deep down, beneath the sarcasm and caffeine, something small and sharp whispered, "You'll show him." Not out of spite, not even revenge, just something to prove that I wasn't the disposable character in his success story. I didn't know it then, but that whisper would become my fuel. The next morning, I brewed coffee strong enough to wake the dead, and looked around my tiny studio apartment, cracked tiles, a wobbly desk, and a stack of unpaid bills doubling as coasters. It wasn't much, but it was mine, my mess, my battlefield. So, I tied my hair into a defiant bun, rolled up my sleeves, and opened my old drawing tablet. Blank canvas, blinking cursor, beating heart. It wasn't revenge, not yet. It was survival. And as I drew that first trembling line, something inside me steadied. Turns out, healing doesn't always start with self-love. Sometimes it starts with stubbornness. I didn't know it, but that tiny act, sketching with swollen eyes and chipped pink nails, was the first page of my comeback story. And somewhere in another timeline, I hope Ethan felt a chill run down his perfectly tailored spine. Because I was just getting started. There's a moment after heartbreak, somewhere between crying on your bathroom floor and posting a suspiciously confident selfie, when you realize you have no idea who you are without them. For me, that moment came around 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, spoon halfway to my mouth, ice cream melting faster than my dignity. I'd just finished watching a 3-hour compilation of women who thrived after getting dumped on YouTube. Spoiler, All of them had perfect abs and suspiciously good lighting. Meanwhile, I looked like the before photo in a self-care commercial. Still, I told myself this was my healing era. I even made a list of things I'd do to reinvent myself. Join a gym didn't happen. Take up meditation, fell asleep on the app. Eat better, ordered fries. But hey, the intention counts. Days blurred together in that soft, hazy way grief tends to color everything. My apartment became a cross between an art studio and an emotional quarantine zone. Half-finished sketches littered the floor, coffee cups formed a kind of modern sculpture, and Luna kept judging me from her perch on the windowsill, tail flicking like a metronome for my bad decisions. I started pretending online that I was doing great. It's funny how easy that is. Post a photo of coffee and a laptop with the caption grind mode, and suddenly you're the poster child for resilience. Meanwhile, the laptop is open to a BuzzFeed quiz about what kind of pasta matches your energy. For the record, I'm apparently linguini complicated but charming. One night, while doom scrolling, I stumbled on a photo of them again, Ethan and the yacht girl, Bianca. They were at some gala, glowing like luxury was contagious. The caption read, "Power couple energy." I almost laughed. Power couple energy? I could barely muster shower energy. But underneath the mockery, a small flickering ache pulsed in my chest. Not jealousy, not exactly, more like a bruised kind of nostalgia. I missed who I thought I was when I was with him. So, I started drawing again. Nothing serious at first, just doodles. Messy lines, crooked shapes. I drew Luna wearing a crown, me holding a sword, Ethan as a confused stick figure with a question mark for a head. It felt good, like pressing a reset button somewhere deep inside my ribcage. Then came the haircut, the universal ritual of transformation. I walked into a salon, pointed vaguely at a Pinterest board, and said, "Something that says I've moved on." The stylist nodded, clearly used to the scent of heartbreak wafting in with her clients. 20 minutes later, my reflection looked lighter, a little unhinged, but lighter. I posted a photo. The comments rolled in, "Yes, queen," and "Breakup glow." Someone even wrote, "He's probably crying right now." I doubted it, but I smiled anyway. There's power in pretending, I realized. You fake confidence long enough, and eventually, your brain starts believing your own PR. So I leaned in. I took long walks, bought candles that smelled like renewal, even wrote sticky notes with affirmations like "You're the plot twist, not the tragedy." Corny? Absolutely. Effective? Shockingly, yes. But deep down, I still felt the hollow space he left, the version of me that only existed in reflection to someone else. I wanted to fill that space with something real, something that didn't vanish the moment someone richer came along. One evening, I sat on my floor, surrounded by art supplies that had gathered dust since the breakup. The air smelled faintly of turpentine and late-night courage. I picked up a pencil, hesitated, then drew. Lines turned into faces, faces into feelings. Each stroke felt like exhaling. Somewhere between sadness and caffeine, I realized I wasn't drawing him anymore. I was drawing me. That's when the idea hit a strange, electric kind of clarity. Maybe this was the time to stop making art for approval, for exhibitions, for someone else's validation. Maybe it was time to make something that simply said, "I survived." Of course, I didn't know what that would look like yet. I just knew I wanted it to feel honest, messy, imperfect, alive. Later, as I crawled into bed, Luna curled beside me, purring like a tiny, furry therapist. My brain buzzed with ideas, too chaotic to make sense of yet. But one word kept echoing through the static: create. I smiled into my pillow. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but it was direction. And after weeks of drifting, that felt like progress. I whispered into the dark, "Okay, universe, your move." Turns out, the universe was listening, and it had a sense of humor. It started small, a doodle here, a half-finished sketch there. Nothing profound, just lines that mirrored the chaos in my brain. But then, one night, while nursing my fourth cup of instant coffee, something clicked. It was 2:47 a.m., That magical hour when all bad ideas start to sound revolutionary. I stared at my blank tablet screen and whispered, "What if heartbreak had a font?" Dante asked why I said that out loud, maybe to trick my brain into thinking I was working on something important instead of spiraling. So I started to draw. The piece was called Algorithm of Loss. I didn't plan it, it just happened. I drew a girl sitting in front of a glowing screen, her reflection pixelated, her expression unreadable. Around her, tiny hearts and Wi-Fi signals floated like broken constellations. It was messy. It was weird. It was me. I posted it online, half expecting 3 pity likes and 1 from my mom. Instead, by morning, it had over 10,000 views. Comments poured in, people saying they felt it, that it was hauntingly relatable. Someone even called it digital poetry. I blinked at my screen, half awake, half convinced it was a glitch. Are people okay? I muttered, sipping cold coffee. But the validation hit like a sugar rush. My follower count doubled overnight, then tripled. It wasn't fame, not yet, but it was noise. A good kind of noise. I started creating more. Every night, after work, I'd sit in my pajamas, hair up, candle burning, and draw until my tablet died, or I did. My art became therapy with better lighting. And somewhere in that rhythm, heartbreak, caffeine, creation, revenge quietly tiptoed in. Not the dramatic movie kind, more like the quiet satisfaction of seeing his friends liking my posts. The same ones who once joked that my art looked too emotional. Yeah, well, apparently too emotional sells. One day, I got an email from a small online magazine asking to feature my work. I reread it 4 times, convinced it was spam. It wasn't. They even offered a modest payment. I almost cried, partly from joy, partly because my rent was due. I sent them my latest piece, post-update Heartbreak. It was a digital painting of 2 people fading into static while their chat history glowed behind them. The caption read, "Some connections buffer forever." It went viral. Again, suddenly, I was no longer that girl who got dumped. I was the artist who turns pain into pixels, which, admittedly, sounded cooler on paper than in real life. In reality, I was still eating cereal for dinner and talking to my cat about art direction. Still, the shift was happening. People started DMing me, asking for prints, commissions, even collaborations. I had no clue how to price my work, so I Googled how much should a struggling artist charge without sounding desperate. The answer, vague. So I picked a number that felt both humble and defiant, 75. When the first order came through, I danced around my apartment like I'd won an Oscar. Luna did not approve of the noise. Somewhere in that momentum, I realized something quietly profound. Revenge doesn't always need an audience. Sometimes it's just doing better than the person who expected you to stay broken. But I won't lie, imagining Ethan seeing my name trending under digital dreams did give me a certain sparkle of satisfaction. One night, I got brave or foolish enough to check his Instagram again. There he was, same smile, same yacht, same gold filter glow. But now, scrolling through, something shifted. I didn't ache anymore. I just felt distant, like watching an old movie you once loved but now know all the plot holes in. I closed the app, no bitterness, just closure. Then, with an almost theatrical flourish, I deleted his contact. The phone blinked once, poof, gone. It felt good, freeing. My days found rhythm again. Work, draw, nap, repeat. My walls filled with sketches, ideas, post-its. One corner of my studio I even called the war wall, where I pinned every rejection, every insult, every bad date quote. It wasn't bitterness, it was fuel. Sometimes I'd look at that wall, grin, and whisper, "You all made me interesting." And maybe that was true. One evening, I opened my inbox and saw an email from a local art showcase. They'd seen my work online and wanted me to display 3 pieces. My first instinct? Panic. My second? Panic. But with lipstick. I said yes. That night, I looked at my reflection, messy hair, ink-stained fingers, exhaustion under my eyes, and smiled. I wasn't the polished, yacht party kind of girl, but I was something else. I was becoming real. And somewhere deep inside, under the hum of my computer and the faint purr of Luna, a quiet voice whispered, "You're not done yet." It didn't sound like revenge anymore. It sounded like purpose. I used to think a glow up meant changing your look, whitening strips, yoga classes, and buying those mysterious serums with French names. Turns out, mine started with a cracked tablet and a half-broken heart. When my first art showcase invitation came, I felt like an imposter wrapped in thrift store confidence. My entire portfolio lived in folders titled things like Final 2, CD, and definitely this one really. CD. Not exactly museum ready. Still, I printed my top 3 digital pieces at the cheapest studio in town. The guy behind the counter squinted at my art and said, "Deep stuff," which I think was his polite way of saying, "I don't get it, but I respect the vibe." The day of the showcase, I stood in front of my little corner 3 frames, a shaky name tag, and a heart beating like it was late for a meeting. The crowd was mostly art students, influencers pretending to understand composition, and one man who kept asking where the wine was. I felt invisible until I didn't. A woman in a tailored blazer stopped at my display. She tilted her head, studying one of my pieces, Pixel Ghost. It showed a figure dissolving into data clouds, one hand reaching toward a notification bubble. "This one feels alive," she said softly. "You sell prints?" I nodded, nearly spilling my complimentary champagne. By the end of the night, she'd bought 2 and posted about them. Her account had a blue check mark. You know, the kind of digital blessing that can change lives. Within a week, my inbox turned into a chaos symphony. Collaborations, sponsorships, feature requests, all from people who had once scrolled past me without blinking. It was dizzying. I kept expecting it to stop, but it didn't. I started getting commission offers from tech startups who wanted art that feels human, which, I admit, is hilarious. A machine learning company paying me to make their robots look emotional. I worked day and night, in oversized hoodies and mismatched socks, creating pieces that blended technology with heartbreak, humor with healing. I called it soft rebellion. My followers called it refreshing. One even commented, "She draws what we all feel but can't admit." I didn't realize it at the time, but that comment marked the shift. My art wasn't about Ethan anymore. It was about me reclaiming my own narrative. Still, I couldn't help noticing the irony. The same art he once dismissed as too emotional was now paying my rent and occasionally for takeout that didn't come in bulk packs. There's a certain satisfaction in watching success bloom from the ashes of rejection. It's not rage. It's not pride. It's peace, with glitter. By month 3, I was juggling so many projects that I actually had to make a Google Calendar. A real one, color-coded and everything. My past self would have laughed. My present self cried mostly from exhaustion, but also gratitude. And then came the big one, a licensing deal with an interior design company that wanted my art printed on canvases for hotels. They called it Urban Serenity. I called it Bills Finally Paid. I signed the contract with shaky hands, remembering every time someone told me to get a real job. Turns out, real jobs sometimes involve drawing lonely robots and sad Wi-Fi signals. Who knew? To celebrate, I took Luna to the vet responsible adult points and then treated myself to sushi that didn't come from a convenience store. Halfway through my spicy tuna roll, my phone buzzed a notification from Instagram. Ethan's fiancée, Bianca, had posted an engagement announcement. The caption read, "Found my forever anchor." Anchors. How poetic. I was tempted to comment, "Careful not to sink," but instead, I laughed out loud, the kind of laugh that startled the sushi chef. Because here's the thing, I wasn't angry anymore. Their perfect life looked so staged it could have been AI generated. And maybe it was. Maybe we all curate our happiness online, filters over feelings, smiles over silence. Still, a flicker of inspiration hit me mid-bite. I opened my notes app and typed a new concept. Goldfish love about short attention spans, shiny distractions, and forgetting who fed you first. It wasn't bitter. It was art. And that made all the difference. I sketched it out that same night to goldfish in separate bowls, each staring at their own reflection, bubbles forming like thought clouds that never quite meet. The piece felt quiet but sharp, personal without being obvious. I stared at it for a long while, then whispered, "Yeah, this one's special." When I posted it, the response was explosive, tens of thousands of likes, messages calling it the heartbreak anthem of the digital age. One even joked, "Someone's ex is sweating right now." I smiled. Maybe they were right, but for once, I didn't care who saw it or what they thought it meant. I was finally telling my story and people were listening. And maybe, just maybe, success really is the most elegant kind of revenge. Success, it turns out, doesn't he have a soundtrack? Just the low hum of your laptop fan and the clinking of iced coffee against glass at 2 a.m. By the time Goldfish Love hit its peak online, my life had become a strange blur of validation and deadlines. I woke up to emails from PR agents, galleries, and one random message from a guy in Ohio who wanted my permission to tattoo the artwork on his arm. I said yes with a friendly disclaimer that I wouldn't be held responsible if his future girlfriend dumped him. My art was everywhere now, reposted, reshared, remixed. Even Luna had her own fan page, which felt both flattering and mildly concerning. But success has a weird side effect. It amplifies everything, including nostalgia. Because one morning, while packing prints for shipment, I got a notification I hadn't seen in months. "Ethan liked your post." I froze mid-tape. A single click, that tiny digital gesture, sent a dozen half-forgotten feelings swirling up like dust from an old rug. Was it curiosity, regret, or just the algorithm being cruelly efficient? I took a slow sip of my now cold latte and whispered, "Don't you dare spiral." And I didn't. Not really. I mean, I did check his profile purely anthropologically, of course. They were planning the wedding, a seaside ceremony. Hashtags already lined up. Hashtag ENB forever, hashtag anchor soulmates, hashtag luxury love. That last one felt like an accidental confession. Scrolling through their engagement photos, I noticed something strange. Her smile looked practiced, his even more so. But maybe I was projecting. It's easier to spot cracks when you've already fallen through one. I closed the app and turned my focus back to work. My collaboration with the interior design firm had just launched, and my inbox was chaos again, the good kind. They'd printed algorithm of loss in a downtown hotel lobby. I went to see it in person, pretending to be just another visitor. Standing there, watching strangers pause to take photos in front of my art, I felt something unexpected. Peace. No fanfare, no fireworks, just quiet pride humming under my ribs. And then, as if the universe had impeccable comedic timing, I got a DM from a mutual friend. "Guess who's getting married next weekend?" I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a fresh canvas and started sketching not them, not us, but me. My own reflection, surrounded by swirling lines, like the chaos finally forming shape. The piece was calm, almost serene. I titled it "Meanwhile." It was about living in the in-between, that space between who you were and who you were becoming. The day of their engagement party, my studio was full of half-packed orders and open paint tubes. Outside, thunder rolled lazily, one of those warm, moody evenings perfect for introspection or drama. I chose both. I made tea, lit my favorite candle, emotional stability, according to the label 10 tenths false advertising, and scrolled through my DMs. One message stood out. It was from a major online art platform. They wanted to feature me as part of a campaign titled Digital Dreamers. The pay? Let us just say it was more than Ethan's entire monthly salary back when he used to lecture me about financial practicality. I laughed softly, but deeply. The timing was poetic. While they toasted to a shiny new future, I was finally stepping into mine. For fun, I checked Bianca's page again. Their engagement party looked like a Pinterest board with too much gold glitter. The caption, "When love is real, it only gets richer." Oh, honey. Part of me wanted to roll my eyes. Another part felt nothing at all. And that, I realized, was growth. Still, I couldn't resist one tiny act of mischief. I opened my design app, duplicated Goldfish Love, and edited a small version of it onto a mock wedding card. Elegant, understated, and perfectly ironic. Inside, in delicate cursive, I typed, "For the couple who taught me the art of letting go." No name, no signature, just that. I never sent it, of course. I'm dramatic, not reckless. But imagining it sitting on their marble counter, next to a vase of overpriced roses, was strangely therapeutic. Instead, I posted a new artwork titled "Unsent Letters," 2 envelopes floating in the void, never reaching each other. The caption simply read, "Sometimes silence says it better." It exploded online again. People flooded my inbox with stories, heartbreaks, gratitude. One even wrote, "This painting helped me not text my ex. Thank you." I smiled. If that wasn't emotional public service, I didn't know what was. The irony? My success had started as a reaction to rejection, but somewhere along the way, it stopped being about him. I wasn't painting to prove anything anymore. I was painting because I could. Because I had something to say, and finally, people wanted to listen. And somewhere, between the glow of my screen and the smell of tea gone cold, I whispered, "I think I'm okay now." Then I laughed softly, because Luna was asleep, and added, "Actually, better than okay." It's funny how the universe waits until you've truly moved on before testing your emotional Wi-Fi again. A few weeks after their engagement party, I got an invitation. A real, paper one heavy envelope, embossed gold lettering, the whole rich people stationery vibe. When I opened it, glitter fell out. Of course it did. It was their wedding invitation. "Ethan and Bianca cordially invite you to join us in celebrating eternal love," it read. Eternal love. That phrase alone made me snort so hard I scared Luna off the couch. I stared at it for a long moment, wondering if this was an elaborate prank. Maybe she found my address through mutuals, or maybe Ethan thought it would be mature closure. Either way, I couldn't decide if it was delusion or performance art. The date was 3 weeks away. Venue, a glass-walled coastal resort, the kind with champagne fountains and drone photographers. I didn't RSVP. I did, however, pour myself a generous glass of wine and start sketching. That's how Goldfish Love evolved into a full series. The next piece was called Luxury Currents. It showed 2 golden koi swimming in separate streams of glittering coins, circling endlessly but never meeting. It wasn't cruel, just true. Each drawing became a quiet exhale, art therapy disguised as aesthetic rebellion. And the strangest part, collectors loved it. The Goldfish series, as followers dubbed it, sold out faster than I could upload. Even the prints went viral. People started tagging me in photos of my work hanging in cafes, apartments, even therapy offices. Irony level. Poetic. But there was one image that stood out, a tagged post from an account I didn't recognize. A familiar handwriting on the caption. Obsessed with this artist's symbolism. "We bought one for the new house." The account belonged to Bianca. I nearly choked on my coffee. She'd bought my art about them. I laughed so hard Luna gave up and left the room entirely. The situation was so absurd it felt scripted by fate's most sarcastic intern. But under the laughter, something shifted. It wasn't triumph or revenge. It was relief, as if the story had folded in on itself, neatly poetic symmetry, signed, sealed, and framed. A week later, a boutique gallery reached out, asking if I'd display the Goldfish series in a curated modern irony exhibit. I agreed instantly. When I arrived to drop off the prints, the curator, a kind woman with glasses that screamed intellectual chic, said, "You know, your pieces capture heartbreak without bitterness. It's rare." I smiled. "That's because bitterness doesn't sell well." She laughed, not realizing I wasn't entirely joking. Around that time, the world started calling me an overnight success, which is always hilarious. There's nothing overnight about crying into ramen while debugging Photoshop crashes. But sure, let's go with that. A journalist even asked if my art was inspired by a mysterious breakup. I simply replied, "Let's just say I owe my muse some alimony." That line made the headline. I didn't mind, it sounded cooler than "girl with lingering Wi-Fi trauma." As the wedding day approached, I felt weirdly calm. No resentment, no curiosity, just stillness. Then, on the morning of the ceremony, while scrolling through emails, I noticed a message from an unknown buyer who depurchased one of my original goldfish love canvases. The note attached read, "Needed something meaningful for a wedding gift. Your work says everything words can't." I smiled at the coincidence. Maybe someone else was going to that wedding too. I packaged the piece carefully, bubble wrap, gold ribbon, handwritten tag, handle with heart. Then I shipped it out and forgot about it. That evening, my phone buzzed with stories from mutual friends attending the wedding. Everyone looked stunning. The couple radiant. The venue disgustingly perfect. I scrolled, detached, sipping tea, until one photo stopped me. A picture of their reception hall. White flowers, chandeliers, and on the wall behind the sweetheart table, my artwork, Goldfish Love. There it was, framed and glowing under soft amber lights. My painting of two distracted goldfish, oblivious to each other, hung above their vows. I don't know if fate writes comedies, but that night, it sure had a sense of timing. The comments beneath the photo were full of heart emojis and hashtag relationship goals. None of them knew what it meant that the art hanging above their champagne toast was born from the ruins of their romance. I didn't feel smug. I didn't even screenshot it. I just sat there, smiling into my cup of lukewarm tea, whispering, "Poetic justice looks good in a frame." Then I turned off my phone and went back to drawing. Not out of revenge, not even closure, just curiosity. Because if love could inspire my first masterpiece, maybe peace could inspire my next. 3 weeks later, I got a small package in the mail. No return address, just my name written in looping cursive I didn't recognize. Inside, a folded note, a glossy wedding photo, and something wrapped in tissue paper. The photo was of them, Ethan and Bianca, standing under the archway, beaming. Behind them, faint but visible, hung Goldfish Love. I stared at it for a long moment. It looked peaceful, unreal even, like someone else's memory I'd accidentally walked into. Then I unfolded the note. "Dear artist, I just wanted to thank you for creating something so meaningful. I had no idea my husband's ex was behind it until after the wedding when our decorator told me. At first, I was mortified. Then I actually looked at it again and realized how beautiful it was. I think it says more about resilience than heartbreak, about moving on with grace. So here's a small thank you, not for what happened, but for what came out of it. Bianca." My hands went cold. For a second, I thought it was a prank. But inside the tissue paper was a delicate gold bracelet, minimalist, elegant, with a single tiny fish charm dangling from it. Not flashy, not cruel, just sincere. I sat in silence for a long while. Luna pawed at the paper, clearly unimpressed by the emotional gravity of the moment. The irony was impossible to ignore. The woman I'd resented for months had just sent me the most thoughtful gift I'd received all year. And somehow, I wasn't angry. I actually smiled. Maybe because it felt like the story had finally ended, not in bitterness or revenge, but in this quiet, absurd kind of poetry. A few weeks later, I wore that bracelet to my first solo exhibition, the one that sold out in an hour. The gallery lights caught the goldfish charm as I shook hands, and for a brief second, I imagined it swimming free, glinting, unbothered. I even caught myself thinking, maybe I should thank them both, not for the pain, but for the push. Because sometimes heartbreak doesn't destroy your story, it just edits the opening line. That night, after the last guest left, I stood in the empty gallery surrounded by my own work, colors, lines, lives I'd built from chaos. And in the reflection of a framed print, I caught my own smile. Real, quiet, light. A smile that didn't need anyone's permission to exist. Next morning, I posted a short caption under my newest piece, a simple sketch of two koi swimming apart, one silver, one gold. Not all endings are tragic. Some are just well written. It went viral. Again, but this time, I didn't check the comments, didn't chase the numbers. I just closed the app, made tea, and let the world scroll without me. Because finally, beautifully, impossibly, I was done. Or maybe I was just beginning. It arrived on a Tuesday, that slow, gray kind of morning where the world feels like it's still buffering. The postman handed me a single cream-colored envelope. No return address, just my name again, written in the same looping hand. Inside, a card. No logo, no sender, just one line printed neatly in the center. Thanks for inspiring my first million. That was it. No signature, no flourish. Just a message so short, it somehow carried a thunderclap inside it. I didn't need a detective to figure out who sent it. Ethan. Of course it was him. The same man who once told me my art was a little too niche, as if creativity came with a market cap. The same man who left for someone richer only to marry her under the glow of my painting. Now he was thanking me. I let out a soft, almost ridiculous laugh. You know, the kind that starts somewhere between disbelief and amusement. The sort of sound you make when the universe's sense of humor is clearly above your pay grade. I placed the card on my desk beside my sketchpad, stared at it for a long while and whispered, "Well, you're welcome, I guess." And maybe it sounds dramatic, but something shifted in that moment. It wasn't closure, it was something calmer, subtler. Like when you finally exhale after holding your breath for a year. I didn't rip the card, didn't throw it away. I just tucked it into a drawer, right next to the old photo booth strips from our first date, not out of nostalgia, but as a quiet reminder that sometimes love stories don't end in fire or fury. Sometimes they just mature into metaphors. I made another cup of tea. The bracelet still shimmered faintly on my wrist, and outside, rain started tapping softly against the glass like applause from the sky. I took it as a sign, a standing ovation for surviving the script I never meant to write. Because maybe that's the real success, not the million, not the fame, not even the closure, but learning how to turn heartbreak into background music, and pain into pattern, and your own voice into something worth listening to again. Now, the story drifts slower, like the last ripples on a pond when the goldfish has already swum away. The lights are softer here, and the words, they hum instead of shout. Imagine the card still resting in the drawer, its message fading slightly at the edges. The bracelet catches one more glint of moonlight before the room turns blue-gray. You can hear the hum of the city far, far away, as if it's breathing for you. And in that quiet, you realize, this isn't about revenge anymore. It's about rhythm, about how the heart keeps beating, even after being rewritten. There's something strangely soothing about that, isn't there? Like realizing the chaos was just choreography all along. So let it fade now, the names, the noise, the neon heartbreaks. Let your pulse match the soft rain outside. Let the story rest where it began, with a girl and her sketchbook, a blank page, and a silence that finally feels kind. Breathe. You've made it through the storm, through the laughter, through the art, through the ache. All that's left is calm, the gentle weight of peace sitting beside you like an old friend. And as the world quiets down to a whisper, maybe you can hear it too, that little voice that says, "You did just fine. Sleep easy now. You've already earned your million in meaning."